Hello, and welcome back to Breakthrough. I'm glad you're here as we keep moving through breaking the cycle of almost. If you've been following along, you know what this is. If you're new, do yourself a favor and don't start in the middle. Pause this and go back to episode 1. The story is meant to build, and it hits different when you walk it in order. All right. Take a breath. Let's step into today's episode. A quiet moment comes, rarely dramatic, when you realize survival isn't an accident. It isn't just toughness. It isn't simply strong personality. Something deeper held you. Something beyond human resilience kept your heart from hardening completely, your faith from collapsing entirely, your hope from going clinically extinct. Once that truth begins to register, however faint at first, the story shifts. If you were never meant to live, you wouldn't still be alive. If you were never meant to love, love would not still ache. If you were never meant to break free, something inside you would not be quietly pushing back against the walls. Hope doesn't begin as confidence. It begins as suspicion. Suspicion that shame may not be honest, that rejection may not be the narrator, that trauma does not get to be historian, judge, and prophet all at once. The shift sounds small, but it is a rebellion against almost. It is the refusal to accept that your life is destined to remain defined by the first words that cut you. This is where God as the breaker stops being a comforting idea and becomes a dangerous reality. If God goes before his people, forward movement exists. Hidden maybe, slow maybe, but real. If he breaks open the way, the walls surrounding your identity are not permanent just because they've been there a long time. If he leads, your job is not to manufacture breakthrough. Your job is to stop calling your change normal. At this stage, hope doesn't have to roar. It just has to stop cooperating with despair. It has to question the narrative that says this is just who I am now. It has to entertain the thought that healing might not humiliate you. It has to allow the possibility that God doesn't merely comfort loneliness. He intends to redefine your understanding of love entirely. Not overnight and not with single emotional moment. Gradually, deeply, fiercely, with the kind of craftsmanship trauma rarely receives. For years, I didn't call endurance a miracle. I called it coping. I called it management. I called it functioning. I learned how to keep the lights on and meet expectations. I learned how to stay busy enough that old memories couldn't get traction. I learned how to carry pain like you carry a heavy bag. Switch hands, adjust grip, keep walking, pretend you're fine. Yet over time I noticed something subtle. Coping shouldn't preserve tenderness, but mine survived. Management doesn't produce longing for God, but I still wanted him. Functioning doesn't nurture compassion, but somehow I cared about people more, not less. Those aren't the fingerprints of trauma. They are the fingerprints of grace. Grace doesn't preserve you merely to keep you breathing. Grace preserves you because your story does not end where pain tried to fix it in place. Grace keeps the tender parts alive so that when the breaker starts moving, there is still something in you capable of receiving what he breaks open. This is the beginning of breakthrough. Not chains exploding and not walls collapsing in cinematic fashion. The shift begins internally when your heart stops treating captivity like a habitat and starts recognizing it as an intrusion. You stop asking, "How do I survive here forever?" and start whispering, "What if I don't have to live here at all?" Endurance transforms from emergency response into evidence that God has been holding your narrative steady while He prepares to intervene. The soul turns, subtly at first, from resignation toward expectation, from numbness toward sensitivity, from cynicism toward curiosity about healing. The same God who names Himself the breaker doesn't demand that you sprint toward hope. He leads you toward it, sometimes slowly, sometimes gently, sometimes firmly, always forward. He doesn't wait for you on the other side of freedom. He moves into confinement with authority and begins pressing outward from within. That's when something inside you stops merely surviving and begins preparing to live differently. You don't always know how yet, and you don't always have language for it. Still, the soul recognizes when it is no longer being slowly buried. It recognizes oxygen. Hope stands a little taller. Faith breathes a little deeper. The word almost loses a fraction of its authority. Not gone and not conquered, but weakening. This is the turn, the point where the story stops spiraling downward and begins tilting forward. The God of Micah becomes more than theology in a verse. He becomes presence in your actual life. You realize He isn't simply a sympathetic witness to pain. He is an active participant in rewriting how your life responds to it. Once a heart recognizes that the breaker is not hypothetical, it stops preparing to live broken forever. It starts preparing to follow. Thanks for spending these minutes with me. Breaking a cycle rarely happens in one dramatic moment. It happens in small, steady breakthroughs, one step at a time. If something in today's reading stayed with you, leave a comment and tell me what landed. And if you want to keep walking with me, subscribe so you don't lose the thread. I'll see you in the next episode.